Carson Wentz headed to Indianapolis. He will join the Colts. Question is, what will the Eagles eventually get in return? They're going to get a third-round pick in this year's draft, but they'll either get a second-round pick in 2022, or if Carson Wentz goes to Indy and plays the majority of snaps, 75% or so, they make the playoffs, that would turn into a first-round pick. Now, going back to the 2016 NFL draft, 5 years ago, both of those top two picks have now been traded this offseason, and 3 of the top 5 players are now on different teams. Now, last week, our Scott Pioli was tweeting about how this deal was going to get done sooner rather than later. Scott, you were right. Why did it need to get done before the new league year?
Well, each day that was passing, the Eagles were starting to lose a little bit of leverage, Chris. And the key thing was, on the third day of the league year, in this new league year, Carson Wentz was about to be guaranteed a $10 million roster bonus, and his entire base salary of $25 million was going to convert to being guaranteed. So they needed, time was not on the side of the Eagles, so they needed to find the best deal as possible and get this deal done. It goes back to the similarity of the Jared Goff deal that got done. He also had a $10 million roster bonus coming early in the league year. So when a team has that has the quarterback or has the player, they start to lose leverage as they get closer and closer to that date. And it's kind of like musical chairs. There's a bunch of suitors out there, people are talking to you, but at some point in time, you've got to stop the music and make sure that you have a chair to sit down in. And that's exactly what happened here in the case of the Eagles and the Colts right now.
You guys drafted Tom Brady. You never had to move on from that franchise quarterback. How difficult is it for these teams? I mean, we saw it with the Rams. Now we're seeing it with the Eagles, to move on in less than 5 years after taking the guy that you probably thought was going to be the starter there for 10-plus years.
Well, Chris, this is a great question, because every year we come into the draft, and as we prepare for the draft, you and I are going to be on these shows together with everyone else from CBS, and we're going to be talking about quarterbacks, surefire thing. You know, teams are tanking to get to quarterbacks, but the reality is there is no such thing as a sure thing. The only sure thing is that you have an opportunity to potentially draft someone that might be the quarterback of the future. We can look at first-round draft picks over the last 30 years, and there's always a sure thing, and there's always a sure thing that ends up not working out. It's a really difficult thing to do, Chris, and for different reasons, and different sets of circumstances, players become good players and players become not so good players. So again, as the slide is showing, in 2016, Goff and Wentz went back-to-back, and this is why, again, also, Chris, we've talked in the past about teams tanking in order to be in a position to get a certain player. Why I think it's absolutely nonsense if you're with a team, you know that you're not going to lose games intentionally in order to be in a position just to have a chance to maybe get a good player.
So put yourself in the front office there of the Indianapolis Colts. You go out, you trade for Carson Wentz, and you hope he's the guy, or at least could return to be like the guy from 2017. What else do you have to do, though, to kind of get this ball rolling and build something around Carson Wentz?
Well, what's clear, Chris, is they need to have a good offensive line, which they already do, but they need to make sure that they keep it intact, because Carson Wentz's biggest problem has been his durability. That's the problem. The best news about this trade, though, is that Frank Reich knows exactly what Carson can do and what he can't do, because no matter how great of a player you are, regardless of any position, you have certain limitations. And Frank Reich knows intimately what Carson's limitations are. So now he's got a quarterback that he knows he has a personal relationship, he has a working relationship with. They are on the same page, not only professionally and performance-wise, but personally. So this is really going to help the Indianapolis Colts, and I really believe that he's going to be a better quarterback with the Colts than he would have been with the Philadelphia Eagles. And, Chris, one other thing that I want to point out is, the point that you made earlier about quarterbacks not making it, it's so true. But the other part is these two quarterbacks that we see in Goff and Wentz, the surprising part is this. The teams drafted them at the very top of that year's draft, and then they gave them the second contract. And we all know how important the second contract is. The team is supposed to know the player. The team is going to give out a lot of cash. They've done that with both of these players, and to see buyer's remorse, that quickly in a second contract on players that you franchise players that you should have known intimately is really something that's very different.
Yeah, it's amazing. We'll see how that kind of shapes things as we move forward because, as you mentioned, quarterback drives everything in the National Football League. Scott Pioli, the three-time Super Bowl champion here on HQ. And look at the change from Sportsline. Before the trade, 9 wins, likely a playoff team. After the trade, okay, only bump up a little bit in wins, but pretty significant bumps as far as conference percentage, that's to win the AFC, and Super Bowl win percentage. From 5.8% chance to win the Super Bowl to 8%. That's quite a bump for just one player. Not according to Sportsline.
Here's the tweet from our JLC confirming the news. The Eagles get a 2022 first-round pick from the Colts. If, however, Carson Wentz reaches 75% playing time this season or 70% of the snaps and the Colts make the playoffs, that could become a first-rounder, and he calls that a smart move. Let's welcome in the man himself, Jason La Canfora. He has said smart move there, JLC. Why is that?
Well, I think, look, this is another move born of desperation, kind of like the Goff Stafford situation where you have a ton of dead cap involved. You have a limited market for the player, certainly more limited for Wentz than it was for Stafford. But from the Goff side of it, nobody was taking that on other than the Lions in a salary dump. So there's some similar, I'd say, overtones to the moves. Why do I think it's smart? Because both sides are protected here. If Wentz plays like he did a few years ago at an MVP level, and more to the point, because this is about durability and availability more than productivity, if he plays 75% of the snaps, which has been a difficult benchmark for him to meet. He's been injured quite a bit, but if he does that, then the Eagles are protected. They traded a legitimate starting quarterback, and they have the chance to get that additional first-round pick. And from the Colts standpoint, they're not dangling a one out there to begin with. Not that they should have, and not that anybody thought they would, given the limited market for this player and given that he lost his job in real time to Jalen Hurts, despite being a recent MVP candidate. So the Colts will be willing to part with that one if it's earned, and if it's earned through durability and or a little limited durability, but the team still gets to the playoffs, then you see the Eagles recoup what they think would be more fair value for a player who at his best, years ago, would have fetched much more than a 1 and a 3. So I get it. The Colts were always the most likely suitor, as we've been telling you here for weeks. The Bears were somewhat involved, but there was not a bonanza of teams dying to take on Carson Wentz's contract.
All right, so the Colts do, in fact, do that. And you mentioned if we see that MVP level a couple years ago. But, JLC, we've not seen that in quite some time there from Carson Wentz. We saw the sack stat that would just come on the screen a little while ago. I mean, he lost his job to Jalen Hurts. He had a league-high 19 turnovers. So in a new place here, do you have confidence we could see an improved Carson Wentz?
It's hard to think he could be worse, right? So I don't know that he could play any more poorly than he did a year ago, physically and mentally. There were mental errors as well as physical errors, pressing, trying to do too much, never really seeming comfortable in his own skin. Now, he's going to have a better cast around him, and I don't think the Colts are done spending, whether that means a trade for Orlando Brown to move over to left tackle where Costanzo retired, whether that's a bold move for a wide receiver in free agency to try to upgrade from a T.Y. Hilton as a Pittman continues to develop with some good tight ends in place. We know they can run the ball. Second half of the year, I think only the Titans and the Ravens were running the ball better than the Colts. So those creature comforts will help Wentz. And look, there is a narrative in Philadelphia that Wentz was at his best when he was with Frank Reich. Frank Reich was kind of his sensei. Frank Reich was kind of his guru. I don't know that Wentz's decline is as simple as that. And I don't know that it's going to be as easy as turning on a light, sitting down in a room with Frank Reich, and here we go, MVP again. But that relationship can't hurt. So that's part of the reason why the Colts were always the most likely team. Reich knows him intimately. Reich has had success with him. And there was a sense, even in Philadelphia, that if Frank Reich was in their building last year, maybe he could have fixed Carson Wentz when Doug Peterson and nobody else could.
All right, our NFL insider Jason Canfora, thanks so much for hopping on with us. Perhaps a change of scenery, reuniting with an old coach will all be good things for Carson Wentz. Something else that is good for Carson Wentz, of course, he is already welcome there in Indy. This tweet coming out in the past couple minutes from Darius Leonard. Let's get to work. Welcome to Indy. Can't wait to see what the future holds in the 317. So what are the odds to win the AFC right now, and where are the Colts in that pecking order? Well, they have some work to do. They're behind Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, Cleveland, and Tennessee. But does this help or hurt them with Carson Wentz? Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.